let's discuss the roles and responsibilities of various stakeholders in maintaining work at height safety. Now, the four key stakeholders in the work at height ecosystem is the authorized manager, the safety assessor, the work at height supervisor, as well as the worker. Now, the WSH Act has better defined the responsibilities and has assigned legal responsibility to those who create and have control over these safety and health risks, as opposed to the previous Factories Act. So it has imposed a general duty to take reasonably practicable measures. Now, the keyword here is reasonably practicable. So it means that it's a proper balance, can be done, it's realistic, and it is can be executed out. So who are these people? So these stakeholders are the occupiers for the physical workplace, the means of access and egress to any machinery, simply by virtue of the fact that they own the place, they are the occupier. The employers are responsible for work processes because they are the ones who hire people to go and do work. They're the boss. Principles for their contractors or workers supplied by third-party labor suppliers where they direct the manner of work. So a good way to understand this principle is that they are the subject matter expert for the task at hand. When they are chosen, when they are required as contractors to perform, let's say, electrical works, or say they are there to perform structural works. So the principle for these contractors, they own the safe work procedures and the method statements of how these tasks are to be carried, and therefore are best positioned to be able to understand the work at height risks involved, as well as being responsible to find mitigation strategies in order to mitigate these work at height risks. Now, employees or the persons at work are to cooperate with employers and not endanger the health and safety of others, and that's pretty straightforward. Manufacturers and suppliers of machinery, equipment, and hazardous substance are supposed to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, that they are safe without risk to health when properly used. Keyword is properly used. We can't stop people from misusing things. Now, persons who erect, install, modify, or maintain such machinery, because they have to ensure that so far as it is reasonably practicable, that they are safe and without risk to health when properly used. So what are the stakeholders' duties? The measures that an employer and principals are required to undertake include providing and maintaining a safe work environment, ensuring adequate safety measures are taken at work, and ensuring that persons are not exposed to hazards arising from the workplace or areas under the employer's control. Once again, the control is critical. It means if it is under your control, you are responsible. Developing and implementing emergency procedures, because emergency preparedness is part of the fall prevention plan. So we need, and when we carry out work, we do need to understand that when something goes wrong, how do we then react to it? We also need to provide adequate instructions, information, training, and supervision to employees. See, the prosecutor has the burden of proof to prove that the accused is guilty, while the accused has to prove that he's innocent. Right? So the accused has to prove that it was not reasonably practicable to do more, and that there were no better practical means. And once again, in a previous lesson, you would have heard about the code of practice, because the code of practice will highlight, this is what the industry does, these are the best practices, and if I had done this is as far as reasonably practicable already. On the other hand, the prosecutor will have to prove that that you didn't do this. That, oh yeah, actually this was actually a common side practice, that if you did follow the code of practice, and industry generally follows this particular method of doing, and you didn't do it, therefore you could be guilty. So each party and each stakeholder has various responsibilities over here in order to prove that he has done his due diligence in order to keep the work environment safe and the people who work for them safe. Now, so what is reasonably practicable, right? It means that you are allowed to balance the considerations of time, trouble, cost, and physical difficulties of taking measures to avoid putting safety and health of your employees at risk against the likelihood and severity of any injury or harm that may occur to them. Now, to prove that a task and a requirement was not reasonably practicable, it will be necessary to show the cost, time, and trouble involved outweigh the likelihood of an accident or injury. Now, all this is easier said than done. All this takes considerable amount of effort, and there is considerable contention in regards to what makes this to what makes it reasonably practicable. And this is the best we have up to now, and this is where the code of practice really does come in very handy. And this is where the real operational knowledge and ground skills of your people and the experience of your supervisors and managers will really come into play, because it is not reasonably practicable to state that a practice has been there for the last 10, 15 years and nobody has had an accident, and therefore that makes it reasonably practicable. A sentence like this wouldn't be reasonably practicable. Now, whether an employer can afford to put the necessary safeguards in place is not a consideration, particularly where there's risk of serious injury or frequent but less severe injury. This, as I said before, it is you can't say that we have always done it like that and that the market is like this, and therefore it is a cost consideration, and that this mitigation strategies cannot be put into place. This would not be considered reasonably practicable as far as the law is concerned when judging whether or not a particular stakeholder is at fault. So essentially, individual employers cannot claim that they do not know what to do about certain hazards if those hazards are widely known by others in the same industry and safeguards are in place, because common practice and knowledge throughout the relevant industry will be taken into account when judging whether a safeguard is reasonably practicable. Now, this is as opposed to when we say that the whole industry doesn't practice something that is safe simply because of a cost factor. Now, the cost factor itself doesn't make it reasonably practicable. On the other hand, if everybody else in the industry does this thing that is safe and you don't, you cannot claim that you do not know. So this the whole concept is there's a sense of a strengthened personal accountability. So to engender a strong safety culture, commitment from top management is critical. The boss must believe that this is right. Otherwise, it will be very costly in terms of human lives and injuries and welfare, as well as on cost. All right. So the WSH Act holds managers and directors of companies personally responsible and accountable for the safety and health practices at their workplace. Now, what are the general duties to be discharged by all these various stakeholders, right? Management stakeholders must show that they have taken active steps to implement sound OSH management systems, which may include the fall prevention plan as well as permit to work systems. They are to have conducted comprehensive risk assessments and implemented control measures to eliminate or reduce risk. They are also expected as management to provide adequate resources. It is not right to keep on insisting that the workforce does certain things to protect themselves when resources are not actually allocated. And of course, you have to comply with existing regulations, code of practice, and industry practices. And you are to provide information to affected persons, which means that a person who is affected by all these risks, and probably he has to know the mitigation strategies, these informations need to be provided them by the management.